If there's no change in the legislation, we have to figure out how to add 45 hours of instruction to our school year. That's going to drive the expenditures of those dollars in one particular direction. If we get the change in the legislation that's been passed by the Senate, and we have a bit more flexibility, we can utilize those funds in a number of different ways, including expanded instructional opportunities for students, which could be more seventh period opportunities, could be more co-teaching opportunities, could be a number of things that we've talked about. That's what I've been working really hard on. But until we get some clarity on that, that's also holding up calendar as well. Because if we need to go in the direction of 1,080 hours, you know, that's going to drive certain decisions around calendar. Or if we have greater flexibility, that's going to drive certain decisions around calendar. So that's why I say that those are all kind of intertwined with one another. Our next meeting as the board is March 11th. The end of the legislative session is supposed to be March 13th. It was scheduled to be March 13th, and I don't see anything that indicates they're going to go beyond that at this point. So we should have clarity around those items pretty quickly. Late start, I think, is a related, but not necessarily a directly related conversation to this, because late start again, a later start again comes down to both a resource issue and a program issue of resources for additional buses and drivers, if that's what's necessary in order to have a later start time at the secondary level. And that's going to have program impacts as well, and that's what we've wrestled with the last several years around this whole issue of later start time. If we chose to do elementary band and orchestra different, or if we chose to do our 9th grade academies different, or if we chose to do satellite programming differently, you know, all of those things factor into the greater puzzle of why high school starts at 7:20 in the morning. So, you know, if we want to revisit that conversation, we would have to revisit that conversation from my perspective, around looking at that menu of programs and services we're asking our transportation system to provide. And we can certainly do that and do some modeling of, if we did this differently or that differently, we might have these greater options.
Maybe that's a place to start as a study session, because I need to be got up to speed, but it's definitely something that needs to, I feel needs to be discussed. So, but I do need to have all the information. So would that be appropriate first to have a study session and then put it as an agenda item?
I think that would be fine.
So we can have
so if we have
come in that we
the
need
7
to
periods discussion at the next meeting, which is close to the end of session, is one thing, but then to have the later start time
an actual
after a study session?
Yeah,
Are
have a
there
study
study
session
sessions?
first.
Okay.
Well, or
do we add to the March one?
Seventh period is a similar conversation. I think from my standpoint, it would be helpful to understand what 7th period options might be. Not having a child at Inglemoor where there is the 7th period, I don't have a background with how they do that and how that might be implemented at the other 2 high schools. And that, to me, there's fewer pieces in that puzzle where later start, I think a study session would be very appropriate. I'm wondering if we could maybe brainstorm a little bit, because things are always shifting with the legislature. I hate to think that, you know, for all we know, they're going to wake up on the 13th and tell us we're having 24 credit graduation. And, I don't know. That's my whole thing about trying to get ahead of their curve. Like, I'm insane, but I can dream. I can dream. So if we can maybe start just talking about what options might be for 7th period, you know, and not saying this is definitely our plan, but start the conversation so that, heaven forbid, they go into an extended session, we still are starting to get the conversation going. We're not trying to catch up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I hear you say, okay.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's very much a conversation that you know, we've been having internally already. So I think we can, you know, again, a lot of what our opportunities are going to be will be driven by what the legislature chooses to do around the 1,080 hours.
For sure.
And what happens with that reappropriated money. But we've been having those conversations internally because we want to hope for the best as well, right. and be prepared to use those resources thoughtfully, and hopefully not have to use them to just figure out how to add 2 or 3 minutes to every last period to somehow get to this mathematical magic place of 1,080 hours.
And that's why I think we need a discussion around it, because I'm not interested in that scenario. So I think it would be good for the board to discuss it and what they want to see.
Well, just to know, that's been consuming the last couple months of my life to make sure we come up with a different option than doing that.
So what am I hearing, are we waiting until the legislature ends and we know what we're dealing with, or are we gonna proceed?
Put this on, I mean, is it
March
possible, is it possible to talk very, very, very theoretical on the 11th? Or is, I mean, if it's too early, like, you know, wonderful, but if the conversations are starting to happen anyways, I think it might be helpful to.
For the 7th period.
For the 7th
not
period,
late
not
start.
late start, because I think that is something that's gonna require a study session. At least for, I'm the same boat as you, Kimberly, all the pieces that fit into that,
Yeah.
because I get questions about it too, it'd be helpful to understand all the pieces.
Would it be helpful, since we've done so much work around this the last couple of years, to perhaps maybe bring the two of you in for some
Catch up.
To tell you
catch up
what-
to speed?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'll
that's
honestly,
fine.
okay.
And then.
So how about,
to spare everyone.
oh, I'm sorry.
No, to spare everyone, and then we can start on the same page.
So I'm concerned that the study sessions that we have booked into the foreseeable future are really critical ones that would be challenging to move. So how about if we put the 7th period options discussion as a part of the board meeting on the 11th? And then in the meantime, I will try and schedule some time with the two of you and the appropriate folks here. We can sit down and have a more of a background discussion about where we've been and the analysis we've done around later start and what the moving pieces around that are, and then we can maybe revisit this conversation on the 11th when we're talking 7th period and see if there's a place we want to go with that.
And a thought on the later high school start time, we had talked that with grade reconfiguration that removed some of the program issues around it. And as we are now, moving forward with that, maybe we could get some information on the different high school start time options. So what would 7:30 look like under the new high school and 480 high school?
Yeah.
What would 8 o'clock look like? What would 8:30 look like? And the costs and
How many buses?
how many buses and what that
What
could
that would look
implement. And I know that's not gonna happen in the next month, but as we're rolling forward, maybe.
And we're talking, because what we've always talked about, or what we've been talking about for the last few years is effort when we do the, in 2017, you're not talking about next year. you're
Right,
talking
in
about
2017, so what the options could look like and how the impacts they would have.
Yeah, and some of those options are gonna unfold out of the ongoing discussions in the grade reconfiguration task forces. I would say that, at elementary, one of the key discussions that has to take place at elementary, she's taking notes, is going to involve how do we want to structure an elementary band and strings program? Because right now that is a major driver of our system. And so with a middle school model, 6th graders at middle school, elementary, might we look at that? What do other districts do? How do they do it? Might we look at that in a different way? If that variable is removed from our system, what possibilities does that then open up? And those are the conversations I really see unfolding
Right, and I
over
think
the next
that
couple of years.
would be helpful to us to see what's the balance with elementary band, what are our options for high school start time?
And I think
Out
before we
is
went,
our options.
before we for sure went, and I think part of our conversation about 7th period, a universal 7th period, was that it would give people the option of 2 through 7, right, instead of 1 through 6 for those who have jobs or whatever, meeting the needs of as many people as possible. So before we change something arbitrarily, I think we would take Marysville's or one district north of us example and talk to the community.
And I think, St. Times had an excellent article on this just a couple of weeks ago, or days ago, just a 2-year study, and did a survey, and has tabled it as a result of their community survey, so they were looking at
That's
what
what I
is it
worried
like
about, yeah. Which is why the 2 through 7 and 1 through 6 6 model seemed like might be a good transportation costs. Anyway, yeah, I look forward to those discussions.
Okay.
So March
Sure,
11th, we'll
thank you.
have the 7th period and study session at a future time.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anything else? Future agenda items, no? We'll move on to board reports.